this first session with a look at community engagement, and Jennifer and I both alluded to some of this, but I wanted to get into a little more detail about that aspect. So start with looking at our user community and note that first of all, an ARM user is one that is formally engaged with ARM by either ordering data from one of our sites, by remotely engaging with computing resources or with a field site or through a field campaign, or visiting a site through a field campaign. We refer to these as data users, remote users, or on-site users. And so there are many people who use ARM data but don't order data from the archive, so those would not fall into one of these categories. When we talk about users, these are the folks that we're talking about. In 2023, I think this represents, we had over 1,100 users that represented one of those three categories. Over 3/4 of those were data users, the balance being these other two. You can see that they're distributed locations around the world. After the US, largest portions from the EU and from China. We engage with the user community in a variety of ways. The field campaigns provide a natural opportunity to engage with users, and we get a lot of feedback, particularly from PIs for the mobile facilities, but really anytime someone comes to our sites, we learn something through that. We engage particularly with the ASR scientists through the annual ASR, joint ARM ASR meeting, and that's been a fruitful setting for really the whole history of ARM, but also other conferences such as AGU and AMS annual meeting. We often will hold targeted workshops or webinars when we want to get input on some specific topic, and that we've done this for a wide variety of issues. Either ARM itself or sometimes BER will organize a workshop. And then we have several standing constituent groups, including the User Executive Committee, but also the Cloud and Aerosol groups that provide ongoing feedback in different areas. For each of these three areas, the science meeting, ARM ASR science meeting, the target workshops, and these constituent groups really rely on written reports, which we use to look at, as a source of input for the kind of prioritization that Jennifer talked about in our annual reviews. In addition, we also try to expand our, trying to understand what additional things we might need to do to serve the broader community by looking beyond ASR. And so this includes outreach to a number of different programs. E3SM is the first that comes to mind. Part of our mission, we are intended to support modeling, and particularly DOE modeling activities. And so we're always working with E3SM to understand how we can serve them better. We also work closely with other agencies, particularly NASA and NOAA. We even have some NASA and NOAA scientists working directly for ARM in mentorship roles, but we also like to understand how we can serve to improve modeling or satellite activities with other agencies. And beyond NASA and NOAA, looking internationally, we look to satellite projects such as EarthCare. We're actively involved with EarthCare right now to provide validation. We've worked in the past with international modeling centers such as ECMWF or the UK Met Office to provide validation support for their modeling activities. And recently, we've looked to other networks internationally to see how we can harmonize measurements, including the European Union ACTRIS network. We have a formal project called CargoAct, working with ACTRIS to see how we can harmonize activities. And this we really see as an opportunity to provide better support for these global satellite and modeling activities by providing more uniformity of ground-based measurements across the globe. All of this input from our ASR colleagues, from constituent groups, from workshops, and our international partners feeds into our annual planning, as Jennifer described, but also periodically to our decadal vision. We're on our second decadal vision, which has been out for about 4 years now. And if you haven't looked at it, I encourage you to do that. It It's available on our website. It includes 4 main themes, looking at how to better serve the community through advancing measurement activities. And this goes through some of the large projects, including the Bankhead site and the new Challenger 50 aircraft, but also measurement strategies, data analysis techniques to make these data most useful to the user community, data services, providing infrastructure for ARM staff and users to implement these data analytic activities and to be able to engage with increasingly large and complex data products. And then again, back to how to best apply these observations to models. So throughout the document, we describe strategies for how to advance these 4 areas. And then finally, this is another input, but every 3 or 4 years, we have a major review of the facility. This is commissioned by DOE, and we just held the most recent review in this past January. And so they will, as through this review, their panel will be asked to address a number of questions. This year, I believe there were 41 questions related to science impact, operational and management effectiveness, looking at how we're engaging with the user community. And we will be assessed on that. There are recommendations that come out of that. And that's another source of input to guide our priorities as we go forward, both annually and our decadal planning. This year, the review went very well. The panel reported that ARM continues to provide high impact science, is well managed and is operating effectively. But as always, there were some recommendations for how to improve this. There were 5 main recommendations. The first is really not a comment on how we're doing, but just a reminder that it's getting to be time that we look at updating our decadal vision. So our next review should be in 2028, and we've been asked to provide an update to the decadal vision at that time. So we'll be working on that over the next few years. There was a recommendation on operations, on risk management and managing instrument reliability. For risk management, Jennifer talked about the engineering process, the flow, and we've been asked to insert in this, in addition, look at identifying risks and how to mitigate those risks. And then we've also been asked to track on an annual basis the performance of instrumentation to try to understand where there might be problem areas and how to mitigate those. We recognize that, and we reported on this at our review, that many of the ARM staff are stretched pretty thin. And so we've been asked to look at the tools they use to make those more efficient for our staff to try to reduce their workload and to make sure to improve training so that they have an easy time using those tools and associated processes. As I think has been true for the last several reviews, asked to continue to work on those connections to the modeling community to make sure those are as effective as possible. And we've also been asked to look at the user proposal process for field campaigns and our computing resources. And I believe that is my last slide, so I will stop here and see if there are any questions.